race. That's a very different race. But I said so. I have a. I'll just say to kind of bolster my point. I have a close
Ah,
confidant
here
in
we go.
my network. Oh shoot,
Okay.
is that Nick?
He's here, but
Hello.
you can finish
Okay.
your you
I
can
would just say,
finish your
like, last thing is a few sentences. I have a
okay.
close confidant in my network who's in the oil industry, and he said
Okay.
everyone on his rig was just given a raise. And what the higher ups are telling management is that oil is going to increase dramatically in the new year. So I mean, like, look, that's just I'm some guy on the internet. I'm an anon. I heard that. I mean, like, it's all he said, she said. But
Right.
I mean, just don't think just because everything looks rosy for the Republicans now that that's going to stay. And like I think because it's easy. I mean, having these conversations, even people that are like that were kind of anti-Trump or skeptical on Trump are jumping on the train now because it's just so fun to be part of the winning. But I mean,
Yes.
just don't give in. In 4 years, when this disaster is made apparent, like they're not going to be able to say that Richard Spencer, Mark Brahman, or the
No.
Apollonians were behind
Yeah.
this.
All right. We have two people. Could you turn off these Minion One and YAHC? Could you turn off your cameras? First off, there's no I don't know why you're using these filters. But uh yeah, there you go. Thank you. It just puts you up there on the screen, and it's just it's a bit odd. They're gonna accuse us of being furries, so maybe no. Nick, wow. Welcome back, my man. You're looking very good, very festive. You've already decorated your studio. You're ready for
Yes.
Christmas.
Well, no, this is all my was my election night decorations.
Oh, okay. Well, it looks kind of Christmassy. Like that's a tree ornament or something. That's at least how it reads, but
Oh,
it's
yeah,
good.
yeah, the
Yeah.
red and green. Yeah, thanks.
Good. All right. Well, um, I thought Hail Trump was bad. But but your body, my choice. Wow, is that is everywhere. So what are your feelings on it?
Well, it's sort of funny. I didn't even think it would blow up like that. I was just I was putting out a bunch of stuff on election night, really just trying to bait everybody. My favorite one, I didn't vote for Trump. I was against him. And I
Yes.
posted, uh, I can't believe we did it, guys. And everybody freaked out. All the Trump supporters freaked out about that one. That was my favorite because they're like, you can't take credit. You had nothing to do with it. So
Yes.
I was surprised that your body, my choice thing blew up because it just is the obvious. It's so cheap, like easiest
Yeah.
bait, low hanging fruit. But, I said on my show the other night, it is comparable to the Hail Trump thing in the way that, in the first term, you were used by the left as the battering ram against Trump, as the radical
Yes.
element. And I feel like now it's a little foreshadowing that, maybe that'll happen to me in this second term if it hasn't happened already. So actually makes me very nervous.
Yeah. We're in a different world though. It's different than 2016. I do think that 2016 was more of a shock, whereas I feel like 2024 there is a demoralization of the left writ large. I
Mm.
think now they're sad. And yeah, there's some hysteric videos that people are passing around about, liberal tears or whatever, some TikTok video. I've seen all that a million times. I don't need to see it again. But I think it really was a massive rebuke of the left in general, or maybe even the establishment in general, because Trump is able really successfully to present himself as anti-establishment. And I don't think it's in a coincidence that he wins as a non-incumbent in a way. He's most powerful at campaigning or out of office or when you can project your hopes and dreams. Like he can be anything in many ways. Donald Trump, like he can be anti-war, he can be pro-Israel, he can be pro-vax, he can be anti-vax, he can be God or Jesus, or he can be, like good policy and small government. He can just because he's such a force. I mean, we live in the age of Trump. He can sort of be anything, and when he is something, that's when he runs into problems. I mean, I think he was on pre-COVID. I do think that he was in line for re-election, and COVID just threw everything into a tizzy, of course, and he didn't handle it in the best way. But we were all demoralized by 2018 and 2019. I mean, it was like Blonald Brump or whatever, and where's the wall? He was reeling, but then he went out of power and he kind of shrunk. But then that shrinking of Trump was almost like a gathering of energy, and I mean, this election it was absolutely incredible, and it was a total rebuke. He absolutely has a mandate for change in a way that he did it in 2016. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? And then what do you think it's going to be different this time?
No, I totally agree. I mean, it's an earthquake. You just look at the numbers, the electoral landslide, expanding on the map, and then winning the popular vote.
I
And
know.
even some of the other numbers. I mean, they say that, and I forget exactly what it was, but this is the best performance by a Republican in 40 years, since the Reagan era, since the 80s at least. Some people say, I forget the figure in particular, but they said something with the House or something. It's the best performance since 1928. I forget what the figure was,
Wow.
but it really was historic. And the mandate is incredible. And that's what people are saying is it was truly decisive. In 16, it was really by the skin of our teeth. We really just got it across the finish line. And they said it was a fluke. They said basically they got caught with their pants down when they weren't looking. He kind of made it. Because Clinton didn't go to Pennsylvania or something. And that was sort of vindicated when he then lost in 2020. Or,
Yeah.
I maybe we disagree. I think it was stolen, but whatever. He wasn't the president.
Yeah.
So it
I think
truly
this
is
time it was
earth-shattering.
stolen.
Where are the 13 million votes? Something happened.
I keep asking myself, yes, Elon knew in advance, Bibi support. Oh, okay, I'll stop. I don't want to get banned,
Yeah, right. Don't want to be an election denier on the other side. No, but you're right. It's I do think it could be different this time. Then again, you look at what's already going on with the transition, and it's only been a few days. I think we'll get a pretty good feel for it in the next couple months. But, a lot of these people, I think they just forget how it works, which is in 1 year's time, they're going to be talking about the midterms. And so
Yes.
everything that people are saying now about getting rid of fluoride and vaccines and mass deportations, we saw it all before. We saw the family separation. They shut it down because of the midterms. We saw a lot of this stuff. And then a year after that, they're going to lose their majority, or they'll have a razor-thin majority. They're going to tell us nothing can be done. So I think there's going to be a lot of disappointment. I think it'll be very similar to the last time. But I agree with you. The left was decimated by this. There's no clear leadership now that Biden and Harris were taken down at the same time in this cycle. There's no clear alternative leader. I mean, you got what? Buttigieg, Newsom, Warren, Sanders issued a statement. Like, these are not good options. And, even the left, they're still sort of disorganized. They have no clear vision. Do they go left? Do they try and, hold the center? It seems like there's not even really agreement on where they go from here. So I do agree with you that it does feel different. It feels different. It is like an earth-shattering victory. And it's like you said, even in their reaction, they are sort of despairing and sad. And there's this resignation, like they sort of just given up. They're like, oh, okay, this is how it is now.
Well, they've like concluded that the country truly is evil. Like,
yes, right.
You know what I mean? Where it's like, oh, a bunch of white nationalists in Michigan, 10,000 of them somehow ruined everything. Like that was a plausible scenario. Hey guys, can you not raise your hands at this point because you keep getting popped up to the screen? I should be. Can you just lower your hand? There you go. Yeah, I'll ask for questions after we've talked for a little bit. Um, but you could say that in 2016 it was 10,000 evil white nationalists who pushed him across the line in Michigan. It's fake. When you see something like this, when you see the Latino vote, when you see it all, that's where I sense the demoralization. I saw that blonde chick, a video of her, from Comedy Central, and she was just like from the Daily Show, and she was like, we're
Oh,
Hello?
I think we lost you, Richard. Yeah.
what?
Oh, we
Richard,
lost you just for
you
about
dropped
5
for a
seconds.
second. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Are you
My
back?
internet connection's unstable. Do you guys hear me now?
Yes. Yeah, you're good now.
Okay. I'll just back up and say you can't make this claim about Michigan or something from 2016. I saw this blonde chick from the Daily Show who was lamenting this, and she just came to the conclusion that we are the enemy. Like the country is wrong. There's no myth about the country as it becomes, more diverse, religiously diverse, browner, more female. The future is female. It's gonna all like the arc of history, baby. The arc of history is bending towards justice or us or things like you kind of can't say that anymore. I mean, it's like the arc of history bends towards Fuentesism. It's like Latino men, are like worse than whites. Like we never imagined this when we planned the Great Replacement. Like it's like this nightmare scenario. I mean, perhaps I'm exaggerating, but that's at least the feeling now. It's that dream of the coming Democratic majority, I think, was ended.
Mm. Yeah, no, that's a good point because it really it challenges their imagination because it's like you say, so many narratives. The future is female. We're all going to be cappuccino. We're on the right side of history. And it's like, well, it's actually a white rapist. And it's the most diverse coalition ever that voted for him. And he's going to send all the illegals back. The Latinos don't want to be with the Latinos. And so I think you're right. It is like, it's really a catastrophe. It's like a devastating development for them because it is like an intersectional catastrophe. He's patriarchy, white supremacy. He's all of it, nativism, nationalism, Christian nationalism, all put together. Conspiracy, anti-vax. I mean, literally all of it packaged together. And everyone voted, white women voted for it, black men, Latino men, Native Americans, Catholics. And you're right. So I've seen a lot of people, like there was some shit lib, she posted some TikTok and she goes, oh, the night of the election, I go to a liquor store to buy a bottle of wine. And, I told the guy behind the counter, Kamala's going to win. I'm a political analyst and, we're doing unbelievably. And the next day, everybody goes, well, what'd she say the next day? We'd love to see her reaction. They're expecting she's going to be crying, seething.
Right.
She has the same attitude. She goes, well, the thing I didn't account for is that the country is evil. It's racist and misogynistic. The country was wrong this time.
Right.
So, you just wonder sort of what is the self-concept of the left when they don't have that historical inertia, that like you said, the sense of destiny, the arc of history is bending towards them. I don't know. And I think it's like you said, no, I'm sorry. I think Darren Beatty said this. It almost makes me a little bit scared because the left in a weakened form, I think they become a little bit more dangerous. I think when they're sort of backed up against the wall like a caged animal, you can almost see the propensity for something like violence or something really evil increasing if like you said, they see the whole country as evil, and they're fed these narratives about,
I don't know, because undoubtedly Trump is a sort of causal factor in revolution towards, say, transsexuality or whatever. Now, Caitlyn Jenner came out before that was like 2014 or 2015. It was a little pre-Trump, so it was in the air. But there's no doubt in the Great Awakening, you can see polls where that is happening from like in the late term Obama era, basically on, with whites like becoming more pro-black than blacks and more pro-immigration than immigrants and all that kind of stuff. But with Trump, they really did put it on, they put it into sixth gear. And the BLM summer of 2020, we're all cramped up. We weren't going outside. It just exploded out into the open. And there was a religious fervor to the left that you don't really see. There was absolute, fiery violence, as we saw. So it really exploded. I don't know where it's going to go from here. I mean, I do think it's actually different this time. I think it's been rebuked. A, B, they're just scraping the bottom of the barrel with this stuff. I mean, bringing blacks into public school in the mid 20th century, that was genuinely radical, and that changed the landscape of the country. People got up and left their town. They created new schools. They fought back on some level. And even the homosexuality thing in, say, the 90s, not as radical, but the idea of two men getting married and it's pushing people. It's really getting at them. When you're doing transgender stuff like men and girls soccer, I mean, we're at the just end stage of the left. Like, what is next? Like thruples or bestiality or none of that's gonna fly. So it's like they've been totally exhausted as well. And so I do think we're at a turning point, and I don't think, I mean, you can clip this and play it back to me. I don't think they're gonna go hardcore. To some degree, like they did post 2016, where it was playing up the woke, screaming and yelling, going out into the streets. The women's march, is there going to be a women's march where a bunch of middle-aged women are going to be being like, I'm nasty, like, no, I don't think so. I think they're demoralized, and I think they're going to turn on each other, maybe more likely. I don't know, just my thought, just my kind of feeling the room. That's what I think.
No, it does. It seems like it's over for them. I mean, and especially seeing how the elites have shifted, like Jeff Bezos waving the white flag at Washington Post, even a week before the election. That was just like totally shocking. And that was almost like the last domino to fall, because 8 years ago, it was really just Peter Thiel out of the new elite, Silicon Valley types. It was with Trump. And then even Elon was a part of some commission under Trump. He left after like a year because of some disagreement. And then Elon obviously went our way. And then Zuckerberg got the perm and the gold chain. He looks like a frat bro now. He didn't do the get out the vote thing this time. Bezos waved the white flag. And so you look at it, between Musk, Zuckerberg, Bezos, and then these guys like Bill Ackman and the AI people and Sean McGuire. It's like you're hard pressed to find, where are the woke elites? I don't even know where they are now. Where are, who even backed Kamala this time? It was like Google, Microsoft, but I don't even think they're necessarily woke at this point either. So I agree. I think the left is just I think they're just out of juice. I don't think they really have a vision. They kind of ran out of runway, because it's like you said, when I was growing up, it was gay rights was the big rallying cry around like 2012, 2013. And it's like, okay, but it was marriage equality. That was 2015. And then it was transgender, anti-discrimination, broadly, that kind of stuff. And then it's just like, okay, it's like you said, where do you go from here? What other minority group has not been exploited? What's the pet issue now? There just kind of isn't one. And I also feel like the right, a lot of people aren't talking about the fact that the right really has been dragged very far to the left. And so it's almost like wokeism in a sense. It's not that it died, it really kind of succeeded in the sense that the right is now extremely diverse, accepted the displacement of white people, now accepts homosexuals and even transsexuals like Blair White and Caitlyn Jenner, the ones that are not so offensive. And, someone like myself would be attacked by like a MAGA chud as being a real racist. Jake Paul tweeted about the clip and said, Republican assholes are saying your body, my choice. Jake Paul, who could credibly be considered like a frat bro. So it's like, was wokeism defeated, or did it kind of effectively succeed as a process in getting everybody away from normalcy, what you could call heteronormativity, Eurocentrism,
To be
whatever.
fair, I was also offended by the clip. But
yeah, well, you and Leia,
as a girl dad,
yes.
Okay. I did know that you were trolling, but I think also, as you recognized early on, that it is going, when it's up on MSNBC on loop or something, they found something like perfect. It's cinematic. Like it just is pressing everyone's buttons. It works. Yeah. And the reality is that abortion rights were triumphant the other night. I mean, that's the other kind of funny thing. So it's a weird situation where that Handmaid's Tale is sort of existing in their minds. So, okay, I'll say this. I mean, I have done my thing, and I think that the alt-right was clearly unsustainable for a number of different reasons, particularly as a sort of like protesting and so on. They pulled out the Gatling guns against it. It just can't work. You're going to get destroyed if that continued. And in many ways, I didn't want it to continue. I made the calculation in my mind that Democratic centrism, Joe Biden, etc., to just simply embrace it so that we can build, we can work on our ideas, we can get serious, we cannot just play day-to-day politics, we can go deep, and that we could use maybe a decade of this, and so on. But now I'm not sure we're going to have that. But but I would say this, even though I was disappointed, I had some 2016 emotions like bubbling up, almost like heartburn. It just came out of it, and I was like, wow. I saw some photos of myself at the Trump Hotel in DC, just totally drunk and just I had those feelings. I actually talked to a young person who was, I think he told me he was 15 or something in 2016. And he's now, he has all the dreams. It's all the exact same things that everyone was saying, including myself, of like, it's going to be different this time. Like, we're moving forward. I'm going to work in the admin. Like, we're kicking out the neocons and rhinos. Like, it's and he's like, we're gonna look good. Like, we've been studying you. Like, we're wearing like cool vests and like suits, and I was like, guys, this has been tried. Take it from me, of all, the person you should listen to. But I had some of those nostalgic feelings. Do you regret what you did, which was opposition to Trump, which they're not going to report on? But MSNBC is just, they're going to report Nick Fuentes as, a Trump lover. He's, he meets with Trump, he ate dinner with Trump, and, talked about Kanye and all that kind of stuff. Do you regret not going along with it? Or did you feel like that you have to sort of distance yourself from it? Well, what are your thoughts on this?
No, I don't regret it at all. I think that, this administration, I do believe it's going to be virtually as unsuccessful as the first term. And I also think that it's completely de-radicalizing people. It's something I've noticed
Yeah.
lately is even a lot of my followers are not that radical. You know, they watch my show every night and somehow they don't get it. They see this, let's just be honest, this Curtis Yarvin, Peter Thiel psyop that is obviously ongoing in the national security apparatus. And they've kind of bought into that and they see it as completely innocuous. And, I know even people that were close to me, the Trump thing, it is just such a powerful idea. His aura is extremely magnetic and powerful. And it has attracted a lot of my people away from me and towards him and then de-radicalize them. So, and I said this on my show, it's like people are watching these TikTok edits of Trump and, it's all the old clips and they set it to music and they make him look awesome. He's not awesome. He's boring. He got shot, took an awesome picture. 2 days later, he gave a speech and talked about Hannibal Lecter. And it's like, okay, so all the awesomeness of the getting shot, we were immediately reminded of what he really is like. Anyway, that notwithstanding, people are drawn towards him. And I know people personally that, they got involved with the Trump campaign. And for example, when Trump said, we're going to staple the green cards to diplomas, that was like, no pun intended, that was a staple of the Groyper War. That was like the foundational moment of my movement or career is when Charlie Kirk said the same thing at Turning Point. And everyone rightly said, you're a fake conservative. How is that right wing? And we were using that to create a dialectic of Con Inc. versus the authentic nationalists or right wing. And when Trump said it, I know a lot of Groypers that said, oh, well, maybe that's not so bad after all. And in addition to the Zionist element, the money from Adelson, the stuff with Iran, and they're apologizing and making excuses for that. And it's like, okay, so he's not a social conservative. He's with the Israel lobby. He wants to staple the green cards to diplomas. Is it not the Charlie Kirk doctrine from 2019? And yet Groypers, many of them, are now okay with that. And so I had to stand out and defy that for that purpose alone. If you see Ben Shapiro rubbing his hands together on election night and saying Trump won on a Jewish holiday, suck it, Nick Fuentes, like obviously something has gone deeply wrong. And so it's a risky play. It's basically a bet. I'm sort of betting on Trump disappointing. And the more that he disappoints, the more people are going to look at me and say, oh, he had it right. Oh, that was sort of the prophetic call. If he does really well, I look like a fucking idiot and I'm going to have to walk it back, but so far I don't regret it because I think that's where it's headed. And the big question is succession. I'm really more thinking things are going to happen in the next 4 years. It's not going to be life-changing. I'm worried about the conspicuous ascendancy of Vance, all these other elements. And the battle is really in 2028 over who inherits the MAGA movement. What does the post-Trump consensus look like? And I think it's sort of an intellectual, spiritual arms race between these like Nietzschean, Straussian types. They're pushing vitalism and bodybuilding and self-improvement and this 80s aesthetic. And on the other side, you got the Groypers, far more disorganized, not funded, not networked. And we're pushing Catholicism and, something very different, anti-Semitism, basically. So I'm really kind of thinking ahead to 28, and I see MAGA as kind of a liability, actually, in that struggle, because after 8 years of it, clearly the Tim Scotts and the Lindsey Grahams and the Rick Grenells, they have a more credible claim to MAGA at this point in time than we do. They can say, Trump was the most pro-Israel president. You're not real MAGA. So it's kind of like we kind of had to split on our own terms.
Yeah. I wonder if these things aren't going to be even relevant in 5 years or so. The bodybuilding people are, I don't know how sustainable that kind of stuff is. Maybe it is. I don't know. So what do you, so we've seen a few things. Susie Wiles is chief of staff. That's meaningful. What do you, Matt Walsh said that, 2025 is the agenda. Now, granted, he was trolling just as much as you were, and he is not in the administration. You were against the denunciation of 2025 that Trump did over and over again. I mean, it probably was good politics actually to do that. Or at the very least, he won, so it didn't make him lose. But I mean, at the same time, there's no other policy agenda really. I mean, well, I guess there's just being a regular conservative, but do you think they're going to do it in some way? Like I think there's sort of three things about where the conservative movement is right now. There really is there's a long-term constituency that is anti-abortion, and it's actually been there for decades. And so, we've heard this stuff, reviving the Comstock Act. Like, most abortions are done through pills. So, they're just going to arrest your mailman. He's trying to deliver. Yeah. Who knows what's going to happen there, but maybe they could do that. I think that's a little bit doubtful. Now, the other aspect was personnel. And that's also in Agenda 47. I think if someone pointed that out. Now, maybe this really is going to happen because Trump hates anyone who's not a loyalist. I mean, he wants lapdogs. And so the notion of firing tons of people, we'll see. Deconstructing the administrative state, just massively reducing, and I think that's on the regulatory side. I don't know about that. And I guess the other thing is mass deportations. I mean, as you said, look, illegal immigration, it is what it is. I think you should police it. But he really is setting himself up for some image of like a young Hispanic girl being dragged out of her home by police officers, and a kind of what was that thing from the 90s? I'm forgetting that. He's setting himself up for this like tabloid image of oppression. So what do you think? I mean, are we just in 2016? 2016 was nothing ever really happened. Some things sort of happened. And then at the very end, in the lame duck session, you had all of this crazy shit, like appointing new people to administrations. There was Douglas McGregor sent out a memo in ending the American empire. People forget this. It was just total bull. No one even thought of adhering to it. But is it going to be different? Like, what do they have a mandate? They have all of these people who are now firmly behind him, all of these people who think he's absolutely oppressed, that the deep state hates him, wants to kill him. I mean, I'm almost thinking that they might very well go for it, and that 2025 is real.
I don't know. I mean, the thing is about that, you start to get nervous that they might actually go all the way, but then you consider who's involved. Trump is 100 years old. He's totally gassed. He's got no energy, and he wasn't good at governing the first time. So I don't think that is going to get better this time. I think he's going to be golfing, to be honest. I think that he's got zero interest in governing. He's going to want to meet celebrities, do the fun stuff, meet the Super Bowl champs. He's going to organize the Patriot Games for the 250th anniversary of America.
Mm-hmm.
And who else is coming into the team? It's going to be these people like Vivek and Vance and RFK. I don't think Vivek and RFK have any more of a team than Trump does. And in other words, the kind of specialists to run the government that could really make a difference. They're also going to be dealing with Congress. And I also think that, part of what propelled Trump into office were these people that I think about Dave Portnoy. After the election, Portnoy said, these far left Democrats, they made us vote for Trump. We had no other choice. And so you look at people like him and people like Sean McGuire and Bill Ackman, they wholeheartedly endorse Trump. We all know the real reason, or one of the big reasons. And I feel like the second that Trump actually tries to do something conservative, all those people are going to say, whoa, 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 we didn't vote. What we voted for was common sense. And I think the second that he strays from like that generic agenda, like mass deportations, when people think mass deportations, and Trump is kind of couching the rhetoric in this way too. He's talking about the worst of the worst gangs, MS-13 with face tattoos, the cartels that took over the apartment buildings in Aurora. If they even try to deport anybody else, it's going to be wall-to-wall media coverage, and Ken Griffin and Sean McGuire and Bill Ackman and Dave Portnoy, that this big coalition are going to say, hey, man, this is not what we voted for. This is what we don't need to deport those people, this and that. So I think they'll be totally constrained. I think they'll find very quickly how shallow their mandate really is and how little tolerance there is outside of things like tax cuts. They'll be able to cut taxes without cutting spending. I think there's a good likelihood we'll expand our involvement in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And
we can talk about that really a little bit later, but yeah.
Sure.
I don't know. Let me just throw this out there.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in total agreement that everything changed on October 7th. Mm-hmm. Bill Ackman would not be supporting Donald Trump if it were not for October 7th. And the elite had a segment of the elite, the Zionists or Jewish elite, had a new calculation on Trump. And I do think that after the Mar-a-Lago raid and Jack Smith and whatever, there was just a general sense that, like, let's just send this guy off to pasture. Like, it's over. Let's keep him out of jail. Maybe that would be it. But it's over. And that fundamentally changed on October 7th. And this is all speculation about the future. I wonder if they're actually gonna give it to him. Like, you need a white Christian America to fight a war against Iran. You need a white Christian America to continue to support Israel indefinitely, annexing Gaza, etc. And you now have a leeway with the Supreme Court of overturning affirmative action to some degree. I wonder if they're gonna actually give it to us in a way. Like, this actually is a radical change, and we've seen the peak of the left, and because they have different concerns. I mean, the left works. That's all great if you want to, fight the power structure of white Christians to such, whatever. If you want to do this or that. But at some point, the rubber hits the road. And at some point, the left it's the snake eating its own tail. They invented a brown class of people who went to Harvard and other places like that, who are smart, mostly female, brown, black, Muslim to some degree. They invented this class that did not exist in the United States, even when I was a child. And that class turned on them. And turned on them in a way, like they turned on them in a more radical way than the alt-right turned on them, or the Groypers or whatever. That was getting fucking serious, because that was delegitimizing Israel, spilling over into anti-Semitism, taking over college campuses. I mean, that was something, and they will never allow that to happen again. And so I don't know. I wonder if we're towards a reaction, like they're going to actually stop immigration and affirmative actions out and so on. But there's going to be a little catch there, to it. And so in some ways, I guess we can sort of enjoy it, but patriotism's back. We're going to be wearing like vintage era baseball uniforms in Iowa, celebrating 250 years, and military men with square jaws, like all white, and maybe like one cool black guy just being like, President Trump. They're gonna give it to us. I don't. Yeah. It's just a thought. Yeah.
No, I totally agree. And after October 7th, I remember doing a Twitter space, and we were talking about Jonathan Greenblatt's commentary on it, talking about there's this generational problem. And, we were saying, where do they really go from here? Because on the one hand, the left is totally against them, decisively against them after on the Israel issue in particular. But you'd say, well, where do they go? Do they go to the right? I mean, they can't. It was unthinkable that Jews would go to the right, but
Yeah.
here they are. And you're right. They rolled back the DEI. They decapitated the Ivy League schools. The Silicon Valley elites are now all pro-Trump. And we are getting this kind of like techno-libertarianism. And, and with what Elon is saying, it is kind of almost pro-white and pro-natal. And it's certainly giving some props to Christianity, even though it's basically a secular movement. And there's this like techno optimism about Mars and AI and human progress and health. So yeah, I think you're right. I think they are going to give it to us. But like you said, they're not, it's not really what it is. It's not really pro-white. It's not really Christian. It's not really any of those things. It's sort of like, it's just enough that, like you said, they can kind of hold the country that would support Israel together. Because even the DEI stuff, I think even, maybe even the national security apparatus started to recognize we're not going to be able to recruit enough soldiers because they're all fat or retarded or whatever. They're not passing the tests. It's leading to a competence crisis for the fundamentals, for the pillars of stability and the global order. And so I think you're right. It is a change. It is a sincere kind of reversal. But I almost think that makes it, in a way, more perilous for us because, the country is going to get more brown. It is more liberal. It is more degenerate. There aren't these two-parent households. And so it's this complacency that almost kills radicalism. And so in some ways, I think, and that's why I was saying Harris wasn't the worst option from like an accelerationist point of view, because people would be angrier, more radical. The economy would suck. She would inherit the wars and the defeat against Russia. And after 4 years of that, people might genuinely explode. This is like the proverbial, pressure release valve, so to speak. And it just makes America effective enough to be a supporter of Israel. And I don't actually think that's good. Like, they will remain in power. And I saw there was a post, I don't want to ramble too much, but I was in a group chat with some of the BAP people, and one of them who's like super pro-Israel, I don't know if they're a goy or not, but they posted this big paragraph saying, we won. People are going to get healthier and the money will flow and no one will care about politics. We're going to go back to thinking you're a loser if you care about politics. And it's sort of true. It's like, yeah, leave the governing to Alex Karp and Peter Thiel and JD Vance, and all the stupid goyim are going to be fat and indulged. They're going to be, things are going to be so good that they, once again, are going to be asleep at the wheel while our sovereignty is stolen by these other players. And I actually don't think that's good. I think it's good that we have radicals and, maybe the things were bad.
Yeah, I totally. One thing to add, I think that J6 genuinely freaked out the establishment. And the conservative response to this of like, oh, it wasn't that bad. Like, it was, things got out of hand, but, they'll say all these things like, were they trying to overthrow the election? I'm not sure, despite what everyone was saying. But they don't want that. That's why I sort of think 2024 was stolen. I'm kind of sticking to this in a way. Like, if Kamala won, there would have been another J6. Like, there would have, like, every single conservative account would say this is bogus and let's go to the Capitol. We don't know what the hell. Like, I think it would have gotten really hairy, and I think the establishment doesn't want that. But, here I am making an assertion without evidence, as usual, that 2024, I'm a little suspicious on whether every vote was counted. But, that's definitely there. All right. The Middle East and Ukraine. Let me give you a hot take on Ukraine that I've been developing over the last day or two. So one thing that I found remarkable growing up as a child in the 1980s when you weren't even a figment of anyone's imagination. I was alive and watching the fall of the wall on television on a tiny little screen with, rabbit ears. Yeah. Um, the the flip on Russia from left to right is just startling for anyone over the age of 35 or so. Like the fact that not all of the right, but definitely MAGA was like Putin's based, biolabs, like fuck Ukraine, it's pretty startling. It was a total reversal. And the left were becoming flag waving, both Ukraine and American flag waving, like cold warriors and war hawks. Remarkable change. And JD Vance says, let's sell out Ukraine to focus on Israel. There was an offer to end the Ukraine war of no NATO for Ukraine for 20 years. We freeze the conflict and in effect give over territory and have a demilitarized zone. And the fighting stops, but we still arm Ukraine. And remember, Donald Trump was the president to arm Ukraine. Obama didn't do that. Obama sent blankets, he sent missiles. I think Putin is going to reject that offer. Because, and here's the reasoning. The arming of Ukraine was why he invaded it in the first place. Period. And he is not going to see that. He's going to say, oh, I'm just going to hand over this problem to my successor. And Ukraine, they're going to have 20 years to birth new soldiers, literally, to grow. They're going to be 18-year-olds who are going to now fight against our army 20 years from now with modern weapons from the United States. And it might not be in NATO, but it's going to be part of the West, basically. And no. And I think Donald Trump's going to turn on Putin and go hard on this issue. This is my speculation, but I feel like this is how it's going to work. In fact, weirdly, anyway, that's my thoughts, and you can react to that or tell me I'm wrong if you want, or just give me your thoughts on Ukraine.
No, I actually agree with you on that. I think that because, and this is one of the reasons why I was against Trump, people don't realize that he actually set the stage for all the problems under Biden. Why do you think there were so many Venezuelans coming here? It's because him and John Bolton tried to do a high-pressure campaign to force regime change in Venezuela. Why did October 7th happen? Because of Abraham Accords, and they ripped up the Iran nuclear deal. Why did Ukraine happen? It wasn't just that Trump was building up Ukraine's armaments, because they were in a war with Russia already, and Trump was arming Ukraine, and they redeployed intermediate range missiles to Eastern Europe. That's one of the things that Putin came in 2020 and said, hey, we could do mutual inspections, but we need a moratorium on missiles, and Trump wouldn't negotiate, and then Biden wouldn't negotiate. And I think,
that was the trip to Poland, wasn't it? In 2017, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So, this is something that I think a lot of Trump supporters maybe aren't even aware of. And Trump is confident that he's going to go in there and he's going to put his dick on the table and say, the war is going to end or else we're going to do terrible things to you. But I don't think they really can. I mean, what can they not? Are we going to bomb Russia? I don't think so. It's sort of a delicate situation. And, what more can we do? I mean, are we going to sell Minuteman missiles to Ukraine that could hit Moscow? I don't think we do that. And I don't think Putin believes that we do that. So you can't even bluff it. So the deal is the deal. I mean, Russia wants, they want to end the war now. They want to end the war on their terms. We want to freeze it and stop the fighting and move over. And I just don't think that's really possible. And why would Russia give it up? They're winning. They're producing more stuff. The Ukrainians are all dead. So I think you're right. I think that Trump and Vance are actually going to be, in a sense, trapped. And I think they might go hard in Ukraine. Then again, we don't know, what Trump might threaten and, how that negotiation might happen behind the scenes. But I think you're right. The willingness to continue the war and escalate it, I think a lot of Trump supporters they are underestimating his willingness to do that and the likelihood that will happen, because I don't think that's an easy one to back out of. We're really in trouble over there. So I actually tend to agree. I think it's going to be a sticky situation there. What can they really?
Yeah.
What's the stick? With ISIS and the Taliban, I mean, these guys, all they did was just increase the artillery. They just did way more artillery, way more bombing. And you can't do that in Russia. So
right. Well, you will have to put a Ukraine flag on your Twitter profile. I'll insist on that.
I don't know. No, I don't think so. It's too far. It's too far.
The liberals are like, Putin's based, actually. Like Kyle Kalinske will do a video on.
Yeah, secular talk and all those guys.
Okay, the Middle East. Things seem to have quieted down a little bit. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I thought full-on shooting war had really begun. Iran and Israel seem to have traded bombardments, but things are in a sort of uneasy stability at the moment. Gaza is total rubble. There is no Gaza. It has the deed has already been done, and Biden and Harris let it happen. And there's just no, I mean, someone brings up like a 2-state solution, or like, what are you even talking about at this point? Like a government run on dead bodies. I mean, it's just horrible. This you and I were saying a lot of the same things. Like he's the World War III candidate if there is one. Kushner was on stage at the acceptance ceremony. Kushner's married to his fucking daughter. I mean, you just can't get away from this. I don't care that he's not in the administration or whatever. I mean, this is irrelevant. What is this going to heat up soon? Like, what do you see happening realistically with this? I'll throw out a couple of things. When Trump was president, he basically gave Israel whatever it wanted. Golan Heights, embassy, big talk, etc. I actually don't even see any other possibility other than the annexation of Gaza. I mean, what are they doing? Like you're going to have a new Palestinian Authority on rubble? I mean, this is just ridiculous. They're going to take it. The West Bank is a much bigger region. There, since the early 90s, there have been movements in there with camps and etc. That's a bigger prize to take. Are they just going to annex the West Bank? I mean, whew. But I could see it. Is Iran ready to just wait it out, and they have you turn off? Okay, I don't know what that was. Is Iran willing to just wait it out and continue to denounce Israel, or is Trump thrown in there by, I'll just go full over the top, craziness here. The evil Zionists put Trump in there to just blow up Iran. Is this what's happening?
Yeah,
what do you think?
I think so. I think that's the goal. And you're right. I mean, from the very beginning, they said they were going to annex Gaza. They were leaked plans. They confirmed their authenticity. And they said, well, that's a number of plans. But between the blockade, the bombardment, killing all those people, moving them all around, like, they're not going to rebuild Gaza. They're not going to rebuild houses for all these people they just slaughtered. And who's going to live in them? The people that they killed all their families, and they're all just going to live side by side with Israel with the gun. Like, this is just not going to happen. And who's going to come in and administer it? The PA, Saudi Arabia. They're going to annex Gaza. That's already a done deal. And I think they're going to annex the West Bank too, because they've been conducting operations in the West Bank. It's been heating up there. A lot of raids, a lot of casualties. And, you know, you look at some of the appointments that are being made. David Friedman, who was the ambassador to Israel in the last Trump administration, he's writing a book talking about how he'll pitch settlements and annexation to Trump. Miriam Adelson said the price tag was annexation of the West Bank. Netanyahu just appointed his ambassador to the United States. The guy's a pro-settler Kahanist. He was in the Jewish Defense League back in the 90s. Like, so all the signals are pointing towards it's the end of the occupied territories. They're going to be annexed. But of course, who stands opposed? Not any of the ones that have been pacified or destroyed. It's the axis of resistance. So, you know, so everything is connected to everything else. How do we get Gaza and the West Bank? Well, you got to go through Iran, and that means going through Hezbollah. So they're in Lebanon now. They're getting all their tanks blown up, high casualties. The defense minister wants to bring an end to the war. He gets fired on election day. So Iran is really the head of the snake. They're providing the funding, the munitions. They're, you know, them and Hezbollah are kind of like the first and second strike against Israel. And what is holding Israel back is that they can't hit Iran without support from the U.S. because Iran is too big and too fortified. You know, their facility at Fordo is underneath a mountain. So you need a serious airstrike. And you know, Iran is just a much bigger deal than Libya or Syria or Iraq. I mean, this is 100 million people. And so they need the full assent of the United States. I don't think that Trump is going to go for that, but it's really outside of his control, just like it was with Biden, because the Israelis have a way of narrowing the options of the United States by provoking Iran, false flags, and they've done it in Iran. They've done it here before. And, you know, I know it's conspiratorial, but I don't think it's a coincidence that they're cooking up this Iran assassination plot against Trump. We all see what that's about. We all see where that's pointing towards. Is it plausible the IRGC is trying to kill Trump? I suppose. But, I mean, what's more likely, that they're really trying to do that, or they're priming the pump for us to accept that Iran killed Trump and we got to go to war? It's
the latter. Even Biden said, if you kill Trump, I'm going to go after you. So it just doesn't, it's not like Trump is the one guy in Washington who's pro-Israel or something. Yeah. Exactly. I mean, it does not make sense.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's a bit of, I would imagine it's a lie, to be honest.
And I think that's where it's pointed towards. And I think that, you know, Netanyahu, clearly, if you've been following the war over the course of the year, they have been deliberately sabotaging the ceasefire talks so that the war doesn't end. And I think the timeline is clear. They wanted to do that to wait for the outcome of the election because they know when Trump goes in, he's going to give them a blank check. And with a blank check, they're going to draw us in. And it was very clear. Every time that they trade fire with Iran, we put 24 warships there, aircraft carriers, troops, planes. That's the perfect staging ground for an invasion, a false flag, you know, whatever. So I think they're going to go for broke. Iran is their last enemy. And I think they see regime change as kind of like that's the last step before they could have their way with Palestine. And they also know that with an isolationist right and with the left being anti-Israel, this is maybe their last opportunity to have full support of America before, you know, maybe America starts to try to restrain them in the future. So it's Netanyahu's last stand. I think he sees it as Israel's last stand with America. So I'm kind of terrified about it. No one else seems to be talking about it too much, but every sign points towards that, even though it seems outlandish.
Yeah. So, and this will be my last question, actually, before I'll open it up to the group, and we can pick up on some new themes. But so, how do you see yourself in the coming years? So, I mean, we all remember when you and I were enemies and, you know, trading insults, and you kind of won. I mean, I have to face reality, right? but the optics war of yesteryear, and I'll just sort of sum it up in a way, which is that the alt-right, it's kind of too radical in both ways. Stop with the rallies and marches. Just it's not a good look, and you're going to get crushed. But also Spencer, oh God, what is this Nietzsche stuff, or what? It's just too much. But your proposition, or people who promoted you at the very, and I think it was kind of your feeling at the time as well, was we are just going to blend into the wallpaper of the GOP. Like, we're American nationalists. And this is absolutely accurate. The GOP attacked Spencer. They hate Spencer. They'll much like the left will use me as a prop of like, this is the id of Trump, or this is what Trumpism really means. The right will be like, this is the guy that we hate the most, like who is this guy, get him out of, that kind of stuff. So I was kind of like attacked from both sides in many ways. And your proposition was we're just going to blend in, like we're going to wave flags, we're going to wear the blue blazers, and talk about God, and and they'll just love us. And there's a logic to that. I totally get it. But I feel like with you personally, you've gone through the looking glass in a way. And a couple of years ago, you were really doing the Christian nationalist thing of, we're going to, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're going to kill the enemies of God, which I guess would include me. But now that you've softened on that, that's good, because that means I'll live. So I'm happy about that. But so you're not quite in that mode right now. That's not what I perceive. But I think we've both reached a lot of conclusions, the same conclusions. We don't want to be a punching bag or mascot or dummy for the left. And the right, you'll pick up on our talking points and kind of ruin them. And then you're attacking us too. So fuck off. I'm not your meme maker. I'm not your talking points generator, and then you kick me out and screw up everything I believe in. So I'm not dealing with you as well. And so there's I don't I mean, is what I'm saying, is this accurate how you feel? Like, where do you see yourself? Is it that we in a way have to be smaller, and we in a way have to be not part of the Trump wave, which is just flowing across the country right now? We're actually not going to be on that ride. And we might be a little smaller, but a little more ideological and truer. These are my feelings. Do you resonate with that, or do you have a different view of it?
Well, it's as somebody else, I feel like you hear somebody else talking on here. It's kind of no, but
a little bit eerie, yes.
Yeah. No, but
let me mute some people here if anyone's on there. Yeah.
Yeah, I just heard a little background, but yeah, certainly I have undergone a sort of transformation. A lot of ideas that I had when I got started, I sort of figured out what we're really up against. And I think I have a better understanding of how it works. And my opposition to you, at least in the beginning, is I looked at Trump and saw kind of the potential of where we could take the message and say, Trumpism could fold back into conservatism, but it could also lead to and be a stepping stone towards something more radical. And I felt like you were presenting something unfamiliar. You were kind of giving up on the flag. Things were familiar, things that resonated, American identity, Christianity. And you did embrace something radical and different. And there's pros and cons to that. But I said, we kind of need to come to people under the banner of Trumpism and say, well, you like Trump? Well, maybe you're going to like us. And I think that was maybe a little naive, because what turned out is they just had the bigger megaphone. Trump defines Trumpism, and Trump put the rubber stamp on the people that outmaneuvered us, which was the GOP. So the GOP filled up the machine, and they made it the First Step Act, and they made it the log cabin Republicans, and they made it they have to come here legally. And it got to the point where we were arguing with the MAGA people, and they were saying, you're not MAGA. MAGA's pro-Israel. MAGA's diverse. MAGA's, and it's like, well, it is. We can't argue with that. So we're at the point now where we are fighting really for differentiation and kind of representing like true radicalism, but while embracing, I don't want to give up the kind of totems and symbols and vibes that these Curtis Yarvin type people are capturing. We are the authentic nationalists. I do believe in nations. I do believe in, I am a real Catholic, and I think Christianity still has a ton of weight and resonance with people. And I don't want to give that up to these. I think we should still fight for those kinds of things. And at this stage in the game, yeah, I kind of have given up on like mass appeal. I actually don't think we're going to win over the masses to something that is super radical. At this point, I am kind of interested in, and I know it was done to death for years, but it seems to have worked, the kind of like elite strategy. I'm really more interested at this point in high IQ people who are super young. And, in 20 years' time, there'll just be a lot more of them that are radical. And it's really just about empowering the movement. I read something recently. They said, before we transform the country, we first have to build the movement. And building the movement means empowering ourselves. And so it doesn't even need, people say, well, what should we do? It's like, well, before we go out and hold up signs and get involved and petition the whatever the fuck and call this one, it's like, let's first just create some fertile ground. Let's get networked. Let's get together. Let's empower ourselves. And I think over time, it will become more apparent what we need to do or where we need to go and where to concentrate. But the problem is in 2017, no one was red-pilled. No one knew any of these ideas. There were so few of us. The channels for communication and finance didn't exist or were actively being shut down.
Oh, God.
So,
the deplatforming of 2017 was just tremendous. Yeah.
It's brutal. You couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So people were like, how do you move the country? It's like, let's start with being able to sell a fucking shirt or post a tweet,
Right.
You need those things. So it's just being a little bit more realistic about how do we get step by step to where we want to go. I don't think it runs through like we're going to be on Elon Musk's platform or the left's platform telling people to be white nationalists like that. It's clearly not the path of least resistance. So but I'm still kind of evolving. I mean, realizing what was going on with BAP was just like a huge realization. That's the difference between me and all these homos that are still on the Trump train saying, our president, white pill. Oh, you're black pilling? They just posted a grunge edit. Like, we did that already. That's retarded. Like, realizing the extent of subversion. Everyone's the Charles Johnson pill. Everyone's working for the feds in some capacity or foreign intelligence. That was like Mormons, a huge pump. Or the Mormons. I don't know which side of that he's on. I still don't know. Are the Mormons the good guys, the bad guys? No. But, it's like.
We might have to torture some Mormons to learn the truth. Just, just pour hot coffee on their face until they talk. Yeah. That's just my
Black
idea.
CIA and the Armenians. Going to be running the black sites where we torture the Mormons.
Yeah. No, I feel like we're going. We have different paths, but I feel like we've come to a lot of the same conclusions. Actually, I think that's remarkable. It's why it's good to talk to you. So let me do this, guys. This. It's funny. I bought more space on Zoom because we were actually pushing 100 last night. and I'm sure we've gone over it, and it hasn't like happened. But anyway, who cares? Everyone, I'll post this tonight so everyone will be able to listen to it. But um, if you'll raise your hand, don't just speak without being called on, but you can raise your hand now, and I'll try to get to as many people. So also, don't give a speech. Definitely ask a sharp question, and that would be best. And I'm going to go down this in. I'll just go down the list. Actually, I don't know if it's your first or not, but Tejas, you first.
Yeah, I had a question for Nick. I think
Hmm.
I think it's important to recognize that Trump is someone who's going to be appointing a lot of people, and I think he's really hell bent on making sure that he's not necessarily rewarding the so-called loyalist, but instead he is going to be focusing on rewarding the people who the donors want. So these will be like the Zionist, uh, philo-Semitic types and all that. I just wanted to know, like, how do you feel about the consequence of such large-scale appointments, and kind of what does that mean for the future of politics, considering that these kind of roles have long-term effects?
Yeah, well, you know, the Trump administration is going to be run by a lot of GOP hacks, a lot of the usual suspects, and they really are bringing in a lot of these like Claremont type people, and they are kind of. It was a factional war. Like when Trump left office, everybody was kind of building up their personnel lists and trying to get their people in the admin, and they really saw it as a huge opportunity. And the missed opportunity is that what Trump should have done is empowered a generation from the very beginning of people that are actually ideologically America first. The Pat Buchananite, Sam Francis type people. Instead, he has empowered either the usual suspects, people that literally came from the Bush White House or the Rubio campaign, and now Claremontsters and Claremont type people. They might be the most radical element, and they're people that are, they're not really fundamentally different. They're basically free market people, although they're embraced like an edgy version of it. They worship Millet. They're Zionist.
Very pro Iraq war back in the day. I remember the Claremont Institute at the time. I mean, yeah, it's absolute neocon stuff. I don't know how they square the circle exactly with
They
what
just
they say
rebranded it.
now.
Now they're
Yeah.
calling it colorblind meritocracy. It's like, isn't that just like diversity by another
Yeah.
name? Equality of opportunity, soft bigotry of low expectations. Like it's just the neo-reactionaries are the neo-neocons.
Yeah.
So the consequences of it are, Groypers, fortunately, a lot of them have infiltrated successfully. That's the good thing. The thing, Richard, I think what differentiated you and I is I was always a live streamer. And it's like
Hmm.
the medium is the message. Live stream is such a powerful
Yeah.
technology. It's so young. It does create this parasocial relationship. And so I don't even have to know people for them to say, I'm going to kill and die for you. And I'm super high
Hmm.
IQ and I'm going to go work in the administration. And there's no one can trace that, So
Yeah.
thankfully there are people that are, they're percolating. Groypers are really everywhere, but they're just not networked and centralized. And that's a weakness. It's also a strength, but it's what we have to deal with. The sad thing is it should have been an ascendancy of people like that. Now, a lot of them are going to be cucked out in favor of these, neocons.
Yeah. Re-DR.
Hi. So Nick, you many times have talked about kind of what spurred on Kamala's campaign is like this histrionic, feminine, longhouse liberalism, and how that sort of crowd made up a large portion of, her support base. You're obviously seeing this on TikTok a lot now. Do you think this kind of thing ultimately turned off a lot of people to Kamala and made them vote Trump? And if so, do you think that the Democrats will ultimately not learn from their lesson and continue to antagonize, white people, men, and the proles at large?
Yeah, I think it totally turned people off. And that James Carville, he got in a lot of trouble earlier this year. He spoke at some Democrat thing And he said that the Democrats don't know how to win men anymore. It's too feminine. It's too longhouse, whatever you want to call it, wagging their finger. And they all booed him. He was right. It's just true. And, you know, Biden was able to be more, he was popular, plausibly popular, because he was a guy. And, you know, people don't want to say it, but he was very similar to Trump. He's like super old, rough around the edges, East Coast. We're America, Jack, patriotic. Even though he was pushing the same shit, by coming from a guy, from that avatar, people could buy it. When it comes from a girl like Kamala or Clinton, not so much. I will say the Democrats, I think they already learned their convention. They were waving the flag. They picked Tim Walz. They had the camo hat. Oprah got up and said, it's my privilege that I was born an American. So they almost like de-woked the Democratic Party. It was very obvious throughout the campaign. Obviously had a lot of, you know, woke stuff in there, but they really made an effort to kind of diminish that. A lot of like token white people like the Harry Sissons and that Parker got, there are two Parkers actually, one at the DNC and one who rolls with the Zoomers. So I think they're kind of already on their way there. It's a much less woke party. And if someone like Gavin Newsom becomes the nominee, I mean, even more so. I don't think he's woke at all. He was very friendly to Trump. So I think they certainly have learned. But the left is going to resist it because the left is saying, we tried your way and it didn't work. That's like Bernie. That's the Free Palestine people that protested in New York and Chicago. It's like Richard said, I think it's set up for a battle in the next 4 years.
Yeah, I've seen some autopsies already where they're really saying diametrically opposed things. Some of them are just outright saying we need to put the woke away, you know, and like more camo. And then yeah, and then but they're smaller minorities, but kind of loud ones that are like, this is what you get when you don't listen to you know, oh gosh, I'm forgetting that. Who is that?
Bag left.
The dirtbag left, or like, who's that girl who supported? She's a black woman. She used to be on the Hill. I think she got fired for. Anyway.
Oh, Brianna Joy Gray.
Joy Gray. Like, this is what happens when you don't listen to Brianna. You know, you lose. You know? So it's we'll see which way it goes. I saw Kyle Kalinske. I mean, I like Kyle Kalinske. He sometimes just he's like, you know, whatever. I don't need to criticize him. He was saying they should just. What? Oh, okay. He said they should just run Jon Stewart and just do a celebrity campaign, basically. And Jon Stewart will say outrageous things on the campaign trail and do comedy. It's a sort of like our Trump, basically. I don't know. I think that is not bad, actually. Crime Pearls?
Yeah, this might be a little bit of a contentious question, but I think when we listen to Nick here in this space, it comes to the forefront of our mind. But the question really is, how do you reconcile the sort of like racialist views that you have along with Christianity, considering that these things are completely non-compatible? Christianity is fundamentally a multiracial.
Well, don't ask a leading question, Crime Fells. So you should ask a question. Do you think that Christianity and racial identity are compatible?
Yeah, that's
helping you out here.
Sure. I mean, it's a super common question. You know, as long as Christians have been in the white identitarian space, people ask it. I don't think there really is a tension. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that. There's clearly a tension, but I don't think they're fundamentally incompatible. And that's simply because, you know, race and religion have existed side by side, especially with Christianity, for thousands of years. So, I mean, we believe, in other words, that we're all created by God. We think that we're all equal before God. We all have souls. But we don't necessarily think we need to live together. I mean, you could go to Thomas Aquinas, you could go to the Catechism of the Catholic Church. There's nothing in there that says we need open borders. There's nothing in there that says anything like that. So I don't think there really is anything incompatible there. We believe that race is essential. And when we die, we're reunited with our bodies in the afterlife in heaven. And, you know, we're going to be the different races in heaven too. It is an essential part of who we are, just like we're male and female, just like we're, you know, every other thing. So I never saw a great tension. We believe in compassion and mercy and those things, but we don't necessarily believe, America should bring in 100 million Africans or something because of that. So,
Do you think there's any theological problem? Like, I definitely understand. I mean, um, Southern racism easily coexisted with Protestantism. There's no doubt about it. In fact, the more the more Christian you were, the more racist you were. In fact, MLK said America is never less segregated than when at prayer, which is interesting. It's even after schools were getting integrated, the churches were hyper segregated. So um, I understand that. But do you think? I mean, I guess this gets to the Jesus being Jewish and a God on a cross and a dying and then rising again God and the just clear statements. There's this impulse in Christianity of you're we're all in this together. Like there's neither Greek nor Roman nor Jew nor man nor woman, in fact, in Christ, that we're all going to be unified. Don't you think there's an impulse in all of these things towards a not a multicultural society necessarily, but a big mix of a social order? Do you at least see that in the religion itself theologically?
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, it says you're neither man nor woman, and yet there is a stratified social order based on gender in Catholicism. I mean, you're neither man nor woman, and yet the women have to submit to their husbands and wear a veil in church, and they're supposed to take up the role of the mother, and there's the feminine genius versus the masculine genius. And I think the same is true of race. Something like, I don't know. Well, and I would also add, it really is an immigration issue, because I don't know. I mean, the real issue in America is that these people are coming here and they're not white, or they're coming into Europe and they're not white. And Catholicism specifically says, with regard to immigration, a country should not take in more immigrants than it can handle. And the immigrants shouldn't have citizenship for a few generations, and they should respect the customs of the place they're in. So, you could take it that way, and you could say that there's this vision where it'll all be liberal, but there's no mandate in Catholicism that says we have to, like, it's a positive good to be a multiracial society. I think it's kind of it's ambivalent. At the minimum, I think it's ambivalent about it.
What about the Bible, the stories of the Bible? I know you're a Catholic, so you don't read the Bible, of course, but just kidding. It's not really us, And in fact, there are a lot of white antagonists in the Bible, both in the Old Testament and the Gospels. Do you think that's a problem?
Not necessarily, because if you are Catholic, you believe that the gospel supersedes, replaces the covenant that was established with the Jews with the new covenant. So, I don't, and if anything, it's situated in Rome, and it's really kind of the only vestige of the Roman Empire left. I wouldn't say it's NATO. I would say it's the Catholic Church, So I don't see it that way at all. I think if anything, it's become obviously a Gentile religion, and the Jews are the antagonist of the gospel. It's true that there's you got Pontius Pilate and you've got some others, but the chief antagonist of the Bible is the Jews themselves that don't convert. Arvel actually had a good take about this. Arvel, he said something like, there's this irony that the Jews are the chosen people. And it kind of makes sense because they're the most parasitic, the most wicked, that they were the ones that brought God into the world. There's like this irony there. I kind of agree with that in a way. So I think that So no, I don't think it's foreign at all. I think if anything, who more embodies something like loving your neighbor than white people, like the stereotype of the pathological altruism, we invented liberalism, individualism, all that kind of
Right.
stuff. I think every other religion is the opposite of selflessness, So I think it's ours.
Yeah. No, I get that. Let me gently push back in one other way. I'm forgetting what I was gonna. Anyone else? We can. Well, I'll maybe. Oh, this is what I was curious about. So, are you? Would you classify yourself as more religious than your parents, or
Yeah,
less?
definitely more.
Okay. So you were raised Catholic, right? You didn't know any other religion but Catholicism, but
Yes.
you've identified it in a more intense way than your parents did.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's it. Do you think that's a story of the Groypers? I think writ large, or of your generation?
Totally. Yeah, because I mean my
Yeah.
parents were I went to Catholic church and stuff, but it's a cultural for a lot of Catholics. It's cultural. It's a cultural right. It's like Jews with their religious Judaism. They'll have
Mm-hmm.
a bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, whatever, but they're not. They don't go to synagogue. They don't know anything about Judaism, and it's the same with Catholics. They'll get married in the Catholic Church, but a lot of them don't even believe in God. Actually, I know a lot of my mom's friends or whatever, their kids get married, they don't even believe in God, but they'll do it in a Catholic church, and so it becomes something like, if you're Italian and Catholic or Irish and Catholic, it's like an ethnic part of your heritage.
Definitely.
And it was something like that for me, but I kind of rediscovered it in a novel way as an intellectual thing when I was in college as part of my politics. And certainly it's like that for, most of the Groypers are actually not cradle Catholics. They are converts, or
Mm-hmm.
they were, and they just like me, they went away and came back. And that's why a lot of them are super intense. I'm not even that. I am a Catholic, but I'm not like a trad Cath, because cradle Catholics we grew up going to Novus Ordo Church. It's totally different for us than these trad Caths. They're totally autistic and super into like the clerical politics. We don't give a shit about that. We went to church. That was that. We went to church. We went and
Mm-hmm.
got breakfast. So yeah, that's definitely that way for all of us.
Do you think, like a lot of Protestants think this way, evangelicals? Do you think that God chose America, or that do you think in that direction? Because for a lot of Protestants, they really do. Like, it is a new Jerusalem,
Mm.
and for the real founders of the America, John Winthrop and company coming on these ships, like this was a religious act to create a community, but they were Protestants. But do you feel that America has a divine purpose?
Not in as much as any other country does. No, I don't think so. Because
Okay.
America's not
So the
really even
answer
a
is no,
Catholic
because a
country.
lot of
No.
a lot of Protestant, they would just be like, "Oh yeah, there's Israel, there's America, everything
Yeah.
else is just, pagan." Like, it can, yeah. All right, that's
Yeah, no,
interesting.
no way.
Okay. Um. All right, I'll go down the list here. We'll get you out in 2 hours. James, you're next.
Hey Nick, I have a question in a similar vein. I see you as a very proud person, and when you like said on your show the
Hang
other
on, give
day,
me 1 second.
okay,
Okay.
Hang on, just give me 1 sec.
yeah, I don't know, I don't know, just the breeze. My hands are cold.
Minion, I think you need to someone's speaking. Yeah. I'm actually really bad at Zoom. I'm gonna try to get my like $55 back or whatever I just paid, but I paid to allow more people in. I think I might need to do that going forward, because we're increasing, and I think we need to be able to have more than 100, but it didn't, for whatever reason. It's just capping it at 100. I don't know. Maybe there are more people. I don't know. No. Did anyone try to get in and they saw a cap and then they had to go?
Yeah, I tried
to wait.
switching to my phone and it said meeting full.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Yeah, that's unfortunate. I'm sure there are a number of people who aren't getting in, but
Hey,
I'll
no, I'm
fix it.
back. Hey,
Good.
sorry about that.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Yeah, go on, James.
okay, yeah. As I was saying, like when you said on your show, total Groyper victory, it made me laugh because it embodied your personality and like that exuberance for like always winning and being proud of yourself. And the problem I see with that though is in the Bible, pride is the original sin. But if you look at it from a certain perspective in the Renaissance papacy, those popes were very prideful. They led troops in victory. They promoted the arts and culture. And I see you as that brand of Catholic in a way, that Renaissance papacy. But the problem with the Renaissance papacy is that the inevitable conclusions of Christianity eventually lead back to the Bible, back to the Bible religion, like Protestantism. And with Protestantism, it is, well, rejection of pride, self-abasement, equality for everyone, and kind of the values you don't preach on your show. And so I see that you're in danger in the next 10 to 15 years of having a pseudo Protestant Reformation within your community. Uh, what do you think about that?
I just disagree with the idea that Christianity necessarily becomes Protestantism. I don't think it's a Bible religion. I think it's, Jesus, unlike something like Islam. Islam is a religion based on the Quran, but not in the same way that, the church and the ministry of Jesus preceded the canon Bible by 300 years. And that's the way the Catholics see it. We had a church first and then a Bible. And we view the Bible as playing a part in the church. Richard made a joke about Catholics don't read the Bible. It's true because we hear the Bible in the Mass. Over the course of 3 years, you hear the entire Bible. And it's true that, we say that curiosity is a sin. We say that you shouldn't even argue. Like, I don't like to do religious debates because I'm not that good at them, but also you're not even supposed to, because unlike Protestants, where it's like, I've known Protestants where they say, my uncle was a pastor and they like can't even read. If you're Catholic, to become a priest, you got to go to a college, you got to go to a school,
Right.
You can't get married. It's a priestly class, unlike Protestantism. So it's just a completely different view. And I would disagree. Even within Catholicism, you have Jesuits, you have people that take up a vow of poverty and all those kinds of things. And I do preach that on the show. I just got in a lot of trouble because I criticize self-improvement. I said, don't improve yourself. I said, because if you're improving yourself for the sake of yourself, it is a form of idolization. It is a form of pride. I said, you're trying to just become a superior bug man. You want to have sex with hotter women and eat better food but you really just want to be a bigger bug. I said, so, we have to think about ourselves as ensouled and not just having bodies, but also having souls. And
that was your most Christian of statements, I would say. Don't go to the gym. The gym is gay. I mean,
it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think about the saints.
I think that was authentic.
Jesus
actually
wouldn't go to the gym.
No.
Okay. Well, thank you, Nick. I've enjoyed your show for many years, and you've filled my life with so much joy. So thank you for that, at least.
Oh, great.
I appreciate that. Glad to hear that.
All right. I'll do Rolo, Dolmetsch, Kyle, and Jordan. We'll try to fly through these. So let's keep them sharp. So Rolo, you first.
I'll do my best. First of all, Nick, happy to have you here. I think you're very intelligent, very funny person. I've been thinking for a while, I've been sort of wondering why Catholicism is so important to your movement, because from my perspective, it doesn't necessarily seem something that's integral to what the Groypers are saying. You can have immigration restriction without Catholicism. You can have American nationalism without Catholicism. And it's also something that, unlike a lot of other things that the Groypers push for, is not wholly yours. Like Biden was a Catholic. You have lots of Catholic leftists who work for the NGOs who bring immigrants in. And I've even seen, like the Baptards, they kind of have tried to co-opt Christianity in their weird way. So, and I don't see it necessarily come up so often in your live stream. So why is Catholicism this thing to hang on to?
Because it's the truth. We believe it's the truth. I believe it's the truth. And, ultimately, I think I do agree. I think it was, I don't know if it was Carl Schmitt or there's a quote I half remember, but they said basically that there's three religions left. There's liberalism, Marxism, and Catholicism. And I think those are really the only places you can go. I think you can really lean into a form of liberalism or you become a Catholic. And I think that if you're speaking purely in terms of politics, it is kind of like our answer to something like Zionism. Catholicism answers a lot of the questions about democracy, liberalism, the social degeneracy and decay, but it also answers the question about, whether we're going to have Jewish people run our government. And I think, they are the exceptional entity. Like they are clearly different. And if you are a liberal, if you're really anything other than a Catholic, you would say something like there are a conspicuously successful minority group, a stateless group, but that doesn't quite do it justice. That doesn't quite explain the situation. And that's also why a lot of non-Catholics are actually far more tolerant. They look at Jewish people as sort of like, well, they're high IQ and you got to watch out for them. Like they're pretty much out for their own group or Israel or something, but they're pretty right wing and Israel's nationalistic. And that has actually given a lot of the BAP people over to overlooking the Straussian infiltration, overlooking, how people like, who is it? Eric Prince and all these others are connected to these Unit 8200 intel companies. They look at these guys and say, oh, well, Jewish people are rich and powerful, and that's kind of because they're smart. So if you're powerful, you're going to overlap with them. Catholics would say, no, they, along with we are the main characters. They're going to be around forever, and they kind of are the antagonist. And so, it almost meets perfectly. I believe that's because it's the truth. But if you were to argue on the basis of like its utility, I'd say that's really kind of the only place you can go talking about modernity, democracy, the Jewish situation. And, as people point out, it is inadequate. Totally. If you were trying to embrace something that would bolster white nationalism, Catholicism would not be the go-to. But I also don't think that that's the biggest priority. I think the biggest priority is really the Jewish situation. It is modernity. It is liberalism. I think those are kind of the problems. And the white suicide is really second. It kind of comes after all those things. So that's really, I think, why it's pragmatically good. Because if you don't have it, what you'll notice is that all the right-wing people that eventually go left, they're always non-Catholics. When you look at like a Hunter Avallone, someone that gets converted by Vosh or Destiny or whoever, it's always a non-Catholic. And so I think the only people that really remain right-wing, that really remain aware of the Jewish thing and, the woman question, all the salient questions, it's Catholics, traditional Catholics. So that would be my case for why it's useful.
I'll just throw this out there. I agree with you, just being oblivious to the Jewish question or the Zionist question, et cetera. I obviously am not arguing in favor of that. But there is a bit of a virtue to not caring about the Jews as much as a Christian must. Because the Jews aren't just some group that appears somewhere in Second Kings or something, and you forget about them. The Jews are the essential people. Like the house of Judah is it. Even if a Christian thinks that he is now the chosen people, it's an emulation of Israel as described in the Old Testament. No question about it. Jews are the villain of the Gospels. Or not. I wouldn't say all Jews. It's Pharisees, but they're the villain in the sense that they don't understand the truth of their own religion. Jesus is he breaks all the rules, but he ultimately wants to fulfill the law in this kind of kind of amazing and very compelling reversal. The end of the world is going to happen at some point, and Jerusalem is going to play a part in that. And I don't really know how. I mean, there's pre-mill, post. I don't know how any Christian can fully get away from that. And isn't there some virtue to not being trapped in that prism of seeing the Jews as an essential, indispensable part of your salvation? Now, that I'm not arguing for just, being like, people are people, so why should it be? You and I should get along so awfully. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm not arguing in favor of naivete, but I am arguing of not seeing them as essential to your very salvation. And I'm definitely aware of Jewish influence, of Jewish power, the Jewish religion, but I don't have anything at stake with them. And in some ways, I can see them like I do. They're in a virtuous way. I can see them like any other people. I don't hate them personally. I don't think they're evil or wicked or they're all but it's because I don't have anything at stake with them. They don't play a part in my story. Do you see a virtue in that?
Well, I guess I would just say, like it or hate it, they kind of are like the relevant factor in the world. I mean,
yeah,
that's true. If you look at like what would be like arguably the alternative, I know you're like into Francis Parker Yockey and that kind of stuff. It's like, or Nietzsche. What's the alternative? Yeah. National Socialism? What was National Socialism preoccupied with? You know what I mean? So it's like,
right. They are the straw that stirs the fucking drink. Like nothing would happen without them. I'll actually grant, like culture, geopolitics. I mean, it's almost, you have to admire these sons of bitches on some level for just like right? creating, dominating the world in all forms. Yes, I'll hand that to you. Yeah.
And I think they were unleashed. I think that, because you think about the last 2,000 years, and obviously they were a critical element in the last 2,000 years. Before that, yes. Not so much, at least not outside of their immediate area. But what changed? The temple was destroyed. They were expelled, and they were unleashed upon the world, and they had to find their way among us. That didn't work. So they had to go back, and creating this entity as like the whole world. That's kind of the main story for the past 70 years.
Right. What changed, Nick? What changed? The composition of the Bible, the publishing of the Torah in Greek, and the generation of Christians. And I would even say this is a bit off the wall. I think Jews wrote the Quran, and I think they created, I don't think Muhammad existed. I think they created Muslims as well. That's what's changed. And,
yeah, but also because
so we're kind of all in their story.
Well, I think we'd be ignoring them if they weren't. That's because they're here and not there, and they're among us. And when before the events of the gospel, they were irrelevant. And then after the events of the gospel, it's not just creating Christianity, but they were also here as the antagonist. And and I would say that, as far as being preoccupied with Jews for our salvation goes, they are no longer the chosen people, and Christians really do believe that. I would say as a Catholic, we almost view it as sort of arbitrary that they were chosen in a sense, because, now you have a Pope who is an Italian from Argentina, You know, a
Mhm.
Jew's not even an ethnic Jew isn't even the main character in the religion. And you kind of see how everything that was physical and material in the Old Testament becomes supernatural in the New Testament. The temple, the sacrifice, the body, all those things. So, you know, like it or not like it kind of explains the world better than paganism. You know, Zeus or whatever, Apollo. Although you could
Mhm.
argue that it's like it's not really a real, naturalistic god or whatever. It's however you described it the last time. It's describing
Yeah.
like a force or whatever, a principle.
Yeah.
But it's real.
We'll send you the book, Nick. You'll learn that they were
Yes.
always among us. In fact,
Is that book finished yet?
Oh, you know me. When I saw that thing of like what, at like time as white supremacist and like blacks, like we should be accommodating to just being late. It's part of their culture. And I was like, am I black? Like yeah, I never handed a paper in on time in my career. So this continues.
I'm waiting on the book. We've got a red.
Well,
Wake
you're
me
gonna
up on
get
Apollo.
the
Red
first
pill me on
copy
Apollo.
signed. Yeah, it's gonna be gift wrapped. Boom. It will come out some point in 2035 or thereabouts.
Yeah.
We'll see. All right. If you need to go, you can let us know. But I'll try to let's try to power through these because these are some longtime listeners.
Totally,
Dolmetsch, yeah, you're up next.
Yes, hi Nick. Thank you for being here. Uh, it seems like with the new Trump admin, there's going to be a wave of repression against the enemies of Israel, whether it is Project Esther or similar initiatives. How are you going to adapt and and adjust your strategy to protect yourself?
I'm going to have to just really tone it down. I said it on my show the other day. It's like, you're 100% right. We are going to be oppressed, or at least there's a much higher likelihood we will be now than under Kamala. So I don't really have a really good game plan. I guess I'm just going to go back to being optical. You know, when we were underground, the rules changed, and I said, fuck your optics, we're going in. I was just going to say we're on Telegram, there's no rules. But now that we're kind of playing a different game, so I guess it's back to we're going to have to do the Keith Woods strategy. If we just keep it very monotone and very academic and very boring, maybe they'll leave us alone.
Vague. No one will know what we believe because it's just a big cloud kind of that floats around. The Keith cloud. It's good this way and that. Where are what do I believe? What am I saying? No one knows. Yeah. It is a strategy. It's true.
Little drive by there at Keith. We gotta.
I do like Keith. I'll reconcile with Keith at some point. Kyle, look. First off, just to reiterate what Dolmetsch said, I absolutely agree with this. And there are these paradigms like in the 2000s for about 10 years, Muslims were actually persecuted. I mean, they were surveilling mosques. They were kicking them out of the country. They're throwing them into prison without charges and detaining. I mean, these things happen. This is real during the Bush era into the Obama era. Then the paradigm shifted. It's like white supremacists. The FBI is going to go. And so, some of us have suffered to some degree with that. I think they're going to go after supporters of Palestine. And I think the FBI is going to mostly be directed towards the left. But being a critic of Israel, if you're a little too loud, I think they're going to go after you. That's I think the WN thing, I think that's yesterday's news, actually. I think the target is going to be on critics of Israel. So, it is what it is. Kyle, I'll do Kyle and then Jordan, you had your hand up for a while, but you kind of put it down. Kyle, you first.
Sure. I'll be as brief as I can. So I as a Christian nationalist, I want to throw a question at you and just see how you respond. Because I have a couple of Christian nationalist friends, guys that are my dear friends and smart guys too, but I've never heard an answer that I thought was cogent to this. So how do you explain, as someone who's a Christian, you take your faith seriously? This is obviously directed to Nick. Um, and but also like sort of a white racialist, right? How do you reconcile something like, let's say, the American, specifically Spanish, Portuguese, and I mean, French, British in there too. How do you reconcile the European conquest of the New World and I mean, like the decimation of Native Americans? Like you could pick out any. There's a lot of conquest you could pick from European history, but this is perhaps the most salient example, given that we're all Americans here and we know these stories well. But I mean, because it's very easy to explain this from like a Nietzschean or Apollonian perspective. I mean, we were stronger, and you have to fight in this world for material and for sustenance and power, and we won. Like the strong do what they will, the weak suffer what they must, as the quote goes. But how do you explain that from a Christian standpoint? Nick, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, as far as the conquest of the Americas went, we discovered the land, we came here, and then immediately became embroiled in conflict. So I don't even know that it was necessarily, I mean, obviously it was a conquest, but we came here, we were attacked. And I would also say that we came here spreading Christianity as well. So, we came here and they have these pagan beliefs and pagan religions. Also, the conquest is a little overstated because most of the population was just killed by disease. So I don't know if you're going for like some kind of a genocide argument. I don't really necessarily believe it was a genocide. I don't think there was really a systematic killing, because there's different forms of colonialism, obviously. The English and the Spanish. Spanish came in here and sort of enslaved the Hispanics or the natives, I should say, but also gave them Christianity. And that's just kind of how it had to be because they were uncivilized, because they were dominated by technology. And then the English came here and set up settlements and were attacked, fought the war, and then won. So I don't think there's anything in Catholicism that says that, there'll be no wars or there'll be no nations or anything like that. I think as long as you have peoples and nations, there's going to be conflicts. And that's kind of what happened, So, so I don't really see the contradiction. I mean, that there is Catholicism and,
I would support you. I think world conquest was in some ways driven by Christian theology. I don't Christian theology doesn't always want to make you meek. I think you need to save these souls. And I think it played a role in the conquest. If anything, I mean, I think it's one of the curious contradictions of Christianity. It does, you can read the Gospels plainly, and Jesus is counseling meekness and hanging out with OnlyFans chicks and all that kind of stuff. But there's obviously another quality to it that is, Faustian or whatever you want to call it, of pushing you out into the world. All right. We're about to hit 7:10, and I said 2 hours. I'm going to let Nick get to his show. So
we
Hunkle,
can wrap up the last.
Okay, we can wrap up.
That's fine, 'cause I got here.
No more
late.
new questions. Hunkle, I expect something ridiculous from you, so you'll have the last one. But I'll do a play called Italy, Chad, and then Hunkle. So, and that's it. So a play called Italy.
Cool. Yeah, thanks. I'll try to be brief. But yeah, Nick, I was going to ask, and I guess Richard too. I mean, do you think there's something about Catholicism that's different than Protestantism in that it actually may be more compatible with Apollonianism in that, because I was raised Catholic as well, and that's kind of part of the reason I think it took a while for me to get away from it is because the Catholic Church produced so much beautiful architecture and art. So do you think that, in a way, maybe it's, you can almost think like, maybe maybe 500 years from now, the Apollonians will be, using the Catholic cathedrals of Europe, right, as these kind of sanctuaries or something like that.
He's not going to like this.
Right. No, I'm just
He's our guest here.
Yeah. But anyway, just to conclude, I mean, do you think that there's something that's more, is Apollonianism more compatible with Catholicism than say, Protestantism? That's all.
I'm not really familiar enough with Apollonianism. I haven't read the book yet, so I don't really know, to be honest with you. But
Mark comes from a Catholic background. I come from an Anglican background. And I would say that I'm kind of a dyed in the wool Protestant. I've always resonated throughout my life with, why don't you go read the text and see what is clearly written there, and that's what it is. And I can figure this out for myself. Also, I don't need some priest. So I sort of have a Protestant like gene or something in me, but I'm proud of that. It's who I am. If I were a Christian, I would be a Protestant. But I think Anglicanism is the best Christianity because it aesthetics of Catholicism and then rigor of Martin Luther combined into one thing. You should
Hot
become an
take.
Anglican. No, yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. But anyway, Chad and then Hunko will bring us home. Go for it, Chad. Chad Thundersea.
Hey Nick, hey Richard. Quick
Hey.
question. Chicken bake or double chunk chocolate cookie?
Double chunk. What about you, Richard? What would you do?
The double chunk chocolate cookie. Yeah, totally.
There we go. Me too.
God, but those people voted for Trump.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, probably.
I was so
Based.
happy when the Yankees lost because that was like my revenge on the Costco family. I was like, fuck you. Yankees suck.
They shouted you out, Richard. How can you hate on them now?
Have you seen Crime Pills did a cameo where he got the Costco family to shout out Apollonism. I mean,
I didn't see
real.
that. No. Is it
send to you.
Apolloism or Apollonianism?
Mark's gone both ways. I think we're sticking with Apolloism because it's a bit of a new word. So, yeah,
Right.
Apolloism.
Apolloism. Nice.
Uncle, bring us home. This is it.
All right, on on the theme of bringing the band back together, are we ever going to get a McSpencer group all-back episode, or we get Keith Woods and Ed Dutton in the same group?
We should do that. I'll reconcile with them. Keith just sort of kind of doesn't like me or something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll work on him. I'll get him back.
Well, yeah, Nick can work on him, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have any issue with Ed really. I just wanted to go in a different way, but I don't have any problem with him. Keith kind of annoys me sometimes. but I'll reconcile.
We're more similar because he's like a nationalist for all. He annoys the shit out of me too sometimes. Very pedantic, nationalist for all nations.
Yeah,
we're
I don't
from
like that
fucking
stuff.
America. We're American.
Yeah. I don't like there is the third worldism is a solid critique of Keith as well. I'm just like, it's just not going to work. I sort of get it. And it's just not going to fly. First off, they don't like you. They'll never really like you. You'll find some like weird, goofy person on Twitter who is, vibing with white nationalism and is a Muslim and hates Israel or something. But like, that's one guy or girl, and it's just not gonna fly. I'm sorry. We got to be us. All right. Nick, thank you for being here. And this was great. This should be a little like Thanksgiving tradition, I like it. We'll check in and see where everything is, see where each of us are. So thank you for being here. And you're welcome back anytime, but we'll definitely do next November. We'll check out. It's going to be fascinating, actually, where we're going to be next November, because we will really know what is happening in the world and with Trump. But everyone knows where to find your show. You don't need to plug anything. Thank you and best of luck. Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, all that kind of stuff.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure. I'll see you next year.
All right. I'll see you next year.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right.